Critics of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints sometimes attack Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, and other early church leaders, for not living the word of wisdom according to modern-day standards in the church. For example, Gerald and Sandra Tanner, after finding examples of Joseph Smith drinking some alcohol, write, Joseph Smith, the man who introduced the temple ceremony into the Mormon Church, would not be able to go through the temple if he were living today because of his frequent use of alcoholic beverages. This suggests if Joseph Smith were alive today, he would not comply with the current standards the church has regarding the word of wisdom to enter the temple. Joseph Smith was in full compliance with the word of wisdom as understood and practiced in his day. It also makes a baseless claim that he used alcoholic beverages frequently. No evidence is presented of any frequent use. The reality is the church viewed the word of wisdom differently in the 19th century than it did in the 20th century, and today. For example, Brigham Young did not view the word of wisdom as a test of fellowship in 1861. It was not until the beginning of the 20th century that the church began to require stricter obedience to the revelation. Observance was finally required for a temple recommend in 1918 under Heber J. Grant. This should not be surprising, as Doctrine and Covenants, section 89, verse 2 says that it was not given as a commandment. Meaning members were counseled to follow it, but it was not mandatory. In the 19th century, the church encouraged members to follow it, but moderation was focused more than abstinence. Not different that family home evening today. We are encouraged to have family home evening, but it is not mandatory. Perhaps the Lord did not give it as a commandment to allow a transition period for the saints to develop new habits and overcome addictions. Had it been given as a commandment and required obedience, many saints addicted to various things would come under condemnation. So yes, critics will find examples of 19th century saints not following the word of wisdom to modern-day standards. It is also important to understand that alcohol, tobacco, and tea were viewed as medicine in the 19th century and was often used by saints for that purpose rather than for recreational use. Use for medicine is completely within the boundaries of the word of wisdom revelation. With this in mind, some examples from the 19th century will be covered. In the first example, we see Joseph Smith drinking some tea after a very cold night. The usage of hot tea in this instance would suggest he is drinking it for medicinal reasons that was consistent with the Thomsonian philosophy that cold leads to disease and heat restores health. Willard Richards, who was a close friend of Joseph Smith, was a Thomsonian physician, and his views would have influenced Joseph Smith in this philosophy. In this example, Joseph Smith attempted to set up a bar in the Nauvoo Mansion house. The purpose was for guests while staying at the house. There is nothing in the word of wisdom that said prohibited the sale of something, especially to non-members of the church. As to the bar, Emma Smith objected to it, saying that it was not a good example for him to be associated with a hotel selling alcohol. Joseph tells Emma that the bar was only temporary until a building across the street for Porter Rockwell could be finished. Rockwell had been in prison, and was in financial troubles. Emma does not accept this reasoning, and does not want the kids to be exposed to the influences that would come with the bar. She tells Joseph either the bar goes or she moves across the street to an old house. Joseph accepts the demands by Emma and places the bar in building for Porter Rockwell that is under construction. Here is an example of a group of saints that were accused of drinking whiskey. Joseph Smith investigates the claims and decides that they had not violated the word of wisdom, and gave them some money with directions to replenish the bottle to help stimulate them in the fatigues of their sleepless journey. The use of whiskey was for medicinal purposes, evident due to the long journey, to help stimulate them in their travel. This example shows that Joseph Smith viewed the use of whiskey as situational. There were times it would be in violation and other times it was not. Drinking to get drunk would have been a violation, but drinking to sustain them in their travels was not seen as a violation. In this example, Georgia Smith records a family leaving the church after Emma Smith offered an old woman and the family some tea or coffee after a long journey. The indication here is the tea and coffee is being offered to revive them from the journey. There is no indication that it would have been offered after a short journey or for recreational use. They left the church apparently not understanding the word of wisdom revelation, and how it was being applied in the church. Use of coffee or tea in the 19th century was situational. Sometimes it was fine and others it was not. As stated earlier, during the 19th century, moderation and excess use rather than abstinence was emphasized in the church. You can see Brigham Young, Heber C. Kimball, and Erastus Snow not speaking against no use of alcohol but drinking to excess. After complaining about a large mess made by tobacco users made in a meeting, Brigham Young said in 1870, "We request all addicted to this practice, to omit it while in this house. Elders of Israel, if you must chew tobacco, omit it while in meeting, and when you leave, you can take a double portion, if you wish to." Critics might point out of cases including Armand Babbitt who were faced possible church discipline by not following the word of wisdom in the 19th century. The examples critics cite involve matters beyond just the word of wisdom. In the case of Armand Babbitt, he was charged with holding a view the Book of Mormon was not essential. The Bible was the sole article of our faith. Him keeping the word of wisdom was an additional issue. Since moderation was emphasized, not keeping it would be something on the lines of drinking excess amounts of alcohol rather than not being abstinent. Critics of the church are wrong when they falsely accuse the church and leaders in the 19th century for not observing the word of wisdom. They followed it as they understood it in their time. Had they had more strict standards, they would have followed them. Thank you for your time.